Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, Mike and John with Coffee and the Bull. Today we have Blake joining us. He's gonna be our guest today. So I want to say thank y'all for taking a moment out of your day and giving us a listen. Just to start off, I know Blake from several years ago. When I started my journey in law enforcement, Blake was already in the game. He had already spent several years doing it, and I know it's probably not memorable for him, but for me it was. We had just, it was my first day. I hopped in, one of our, he's now both of our friends, Scott, hopped in Scott's unit, and Scott was going to take in. He was my training officer. So first day he says, "Hey, look, we're going to shift meeting. We're going to go do our shift meeting." I didn't know what that was, and come to find out that was code for we're going to the PJ's Coffee House, and we're just going to drink coffee until we get the first call for service. And so I'm sitting there, I didn't know any of these guys. I didn't know what law enforcement was going to be like. I thought I had an idea. I'm waiting on the first bank robbery to come out. And all this other stuff like the cool stuff.
Right.
And we're sitting there drinking coffee, and I'm just like, oh my God, and so Blake walked in. He was a little bit after us. I think he had to spend more time getting ready that morning or whatever. But he walks in, and I remember thinking to myself that day, I was like, this dude looks good. He's ready for work. He's ready to get after it. Like he is going to be like if I needed somebody to show up at my house, this is who I want to show up.
Boots were shined and everything, baby.
And then
boots were shined and everything.
And then Blake told me to stop looking in the mirror. But no. Me and Blake kind of hit it off pretty good right off the bat. I think it's because we got kind of similar judge of character, or whatever or what have you. But about 6 months into my law enforcement journey. Blake had brought up, he was at a spot where, he was leaving leaving that agency at the time, and so I remember, getting him and his wife over and we're sitting there talking because I was like, why would you leave this? This is the greatest job in the world. At the time I hadn't been, hadn't really experienced a whole lot of, of grief and stuff yet. I'm still in the honeymoon phase of the job. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why would you leave? Like, if we're good at this, you don't leave. Like, this is your calling. Right. We're sheepdogs. We are the thin blue line. All those cheesy phrases, like that's what was, I was breathing that stuff at the time. And he just, didn't shoot me down, didn't do anything like that. But it was just simply, hey, man, I'm burnt out. These are the reasons I'm burnt out. Give it time. It's going to come meet you, and I'll be so. It was about the same amount of time, about right at the 4.5 year mark where I was just like, I've got to step out for a minute, and kind of recharge.
Yeah. And I think for me, and thank you for the kind words.
Usually he says when you're not here.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's what I was going to say.
Next episode, like,
I think
thank
that
God he's gone.
Well, I think a couple of things, like I remember the first day you got there. So he probably doesn't tell you this. We're going on patrol and there was a turtle in the middle of the road. And his FTO.
That was not the first day. That was like a month in.
I've never heard the
I saved a turtle. I 100%
he saved the turtle.
There's picture evidence of it.
And so they took a picture, and the FTO made him get the turtle out of the road. Community service. We were protecting.
He had to zoom out because my muscles were so big, reaching down to pick it up.
So it was basically
sorry
about the lies on today's podcast.
Like it was
right.
You remember the 1980s movies where it was like the arachnid or the big spider fighting Godzilla. That's what this turtle could fight Godzilla.
So anyway, no, it couldn't. It was the smallest turtle in the world. But anyway,
surprised you saw it on the road.
It's like the little thing from Finding Nemo.
Right. Oh, bro, what's going on, man? I think for me, and just talking about law enforcement, anytime somebody new comes in on your shift, and around the time that Mike had come in. I did what they called the death shift, where you go from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Yeah. And so because we were short on guys and units, and so that had really kind of like, hey, man, I'm in the toughest window of law enforcement, that 12 to 12 period.
Right.
And I always went into...
And just to, not to interrupt, but just so for the people listening, that's your higher call volume. Like that's it's not, it's,
right.
You start the moment the calls start, and by the time you quit is when the calls quit. So
you go in and
you're bumping and going the whole time.
Right, you're bumping and going. Like there was one day I caught 72 calls for service, and it kind of gets you burnt out. Now, some of them are like
they're dumb, but
they're dumb, but like, okay, I mean, some of them get canceled because of something stupid, or like, hey, no, everything's fine, like whatever. So, but you still are on the way, like you're still catching them. But when I first went into law enforcement, I'll never forget. Somebody told me, it was like, hey, you need to know who's going to have your back,
right?
And you need to know like quickly, you need to find out what their mental state is, why they want to do it, their experience level, and like what their experience level is, so that you can back them up and to prevent stuff. Because you guys know this in a smaller area, there's a strong chance if you're in this business a long time and being in patrol for that long, because I was in law enforcement before like hitting patrol, but like you're going to run into the same bit of characters, right?
Yep.
And so, like, if they see you and you treat them with a level of respect, then they don't know you. Like, but they might know me, and we might have a good connection. So, I just went into law enforcement, man. I actually was like you in a way. I wanted to like serve. I wanted to protect, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I felt called to like serve, protect, stuff like that. But you talked about burnout, and look, I've had multiple different things, and I've been in law enforcement. I've been in high law enforcement. I've been in, low law enforcement, and I've seen the differences of like how you do things. And the higher I climbed, the higher I went, the more stressors that came down. But and I tell this to everybody that like I have these conversations with, there is no more stress than you being a patrol deputy. None. Zero.
Right.
Not detective, not, like maybe if you're an elected official, maybe. I mean, like they got to deal with a lot. Right. I assume they deal with a lot. The stress that they have to deal with, because they're over everything. Jail, like everything.
And somehow they're responsible even though they were never there.
Right.
It's
Well, because it's like it's your organization, you're elected, and like something that you, like, I saw a case out in Wyoming. This guy's taking his wife for his anniversary. They're going to like on a vacation, and they're like holding him accountable. And I'm like, I get what you're saying.
Right.
Like it's under his watch, but at the same time, like we're all human beings. So to your part about burnout, man, for me, I didn't think that I could reach anybody anymore. Like I didn't feel like that I could reach anybody inside the sheriff's office or wherever I was. That might need to be edited out, but
you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
I don't feel like that I could reach anybody. I didn't feel like that I had adequate, people
Support system.
a
Like
system
upper
around
support
me
system?
because
Yeah.
I was catching so many calls and dangerous calls by myself.
Right.
And it's not, and it wasn't, and just to make this very clear, it's not because that they didn't want to come.
Right.
It's because
The
they're
call
on
volume.
something
Right,
else too, right? And
the
so
call volume was
the call volume, and I think that from a system like that, that is dangerous. That is so crazy.
Right.
And I'll be real with you. I just got burnt out on not so much the job necessarily, but more so like all the other shit that you got to deal with on top of like the craziest job. And I'm not really ashamed to say this. Like I can see now like my mental state then versus my mental state now, and I see the problems and issues that I had. Look, I'm not ashamed to say what I thought that I had, and I think that people that can put two and two together of what I know that I did have. And I was just like, look, for my like mental health, for my physical health, I cannot continue to do this at this exact situation.
Right.
So when you came in and you talk about that, it was just like, look, man, this is best for me. You can think whatever you want about me.
Right.
Like he's leaving. He's scapegoating.
Right.
Like he don't. No, you. I don't want. This is about me. Right. Like this is 100% about me. And so when I got to a higher level of law enforcement, it wasn't about that. And so like it got to a place where when I moved on, okay, it got to a place where I knew what all the guys that I was over or what I would say, I know what you're going through, my guy. Like I know what you're going through. Like I'll go out there with you. Like let's go.
Right.
And so I'm glad that I had the experience, but I also learned that, like, hey, man, if I could go through that and now running a business and now running a podcast, like what you're doing, it's like the stress is still there.
Right.
But it's so much more minimal of like, hey, man, if I can get through this call, then I know that I can get through this. And I think that it is the adversity that I saw and overcame then translates to other things. Because, look, man, it doesn't matter if you're in the military or if you're police or whatever. The adversity that you guys or anybody sees throughout a day is immense. And I think that when this cop gave me lip, well, you have no idea what he saw 30 minutes before he pulled you over, right? Like, and what did he pull you over? Oh, I was going 85 and a 70. Well, slow down.
Well,
that's the big thing.
I had one. I got a complaint filed against me one time because
I'm trying
to think about.
No, you did.
It was. We had a and I obviously can't go into too much detail with it, but we had a altercation with a guy that was epic level. It was not just a, hey, get on the ground and you put an arm bar, put him on the ground. Like, it was a knockdown, drag out, get after it. Like, we are all about business, and thank God other people showed up type fight,
Right.
And I remember I had this dude's blood all over my uniform and everything. And I got called off of that call to pick up before it was done. Like, we had to do in the unit, but we still had medical and all this other stuff to do for other people that were on scene. And they had me pick up and go to this call 30 minutes up the road that this lady had not been paying they hadn't been paying their truck note. Their car was getting repossessed, and she knew it. She just didn't know that was the exact repossession company that was coming to get it. Oh. I'm like, you got it. Like, you,
right.
You, so you ain't paid your note in 8 months.
You're still
it's not
coming
a surprise,
down.
I'm still coming down off
that high,
off the
and now you
got to
go deal with something. And not to discredit it and be like your problem is stupid, but it really is. Like, it's like you knew this
on a comparative
coming.
scale. It's like and so you don't know what 30 minutes ago what they were doing.
And two, like, one thing that I think law enforcement gets absolutely wrong across the board, not local. Okay,
right.
I'm just talking about across the board.
Right.
There are statistics that have come out in reference to deputies or officers that catch civil issues, right? Meaning like civil calls,
right?
Meaning like whether it be child whether
custody,
it be child custody, whether it
I
be
want my TV back from my wife,
or like a rent-to-own place lends you something and they want their TV back or whatever. In no way possible should a law enforcement officer be involved in that. None. Right. And unless a judge deems it worthy to, like, for child custody or whatever, like, hey, man, we are there to protect and serve from criminal aspects. And the general public doesn't really understand either, I don't think, about, like, what you can and cannot do in those types of situations.
Right.
And I think just across the board, you could cut how many calls out for meaningless BS, okay, for something. And I get, like, hey, man, you can be there so that an all-out riot doesn't break out, But it's those small calls of pettiness.
Yes.
Well, I find that those are typically the ones where you get your complaints and stuff like that, because you can't, like, there's certain things legally you can't do, but there's this expectation that, hey, I saw it on TV in the movie, the cop did this, so obviously you can do it. And so
my friend
because
Becky
you can't do something legally, they think that you're just being lazy.
Well, the one thing that I try to do when people question me is that I never wanted to go into a situation, and I met many of them, where I didn't know, but when I went into a situation where, like, hey, you can't do this, ma'am, sir, so, like, Pennsylvania versus Mims dictates, and you can read this for yourself, that I can do X, Y, and Z. Now what? And I always noticed, like, hey, when you give them the exact thing of what you cannot do or what you can do, magically
the problem is
resolved. Right. And I'm like, ma'am, sir, you can read it for yourself. And the big thing is, like, for officer safety, like, even on a traffic stop, I never went up to a car personally. I made them get out, okay? Because statistics will show this too. More people are going to get in trouble, okay, when you can't see, you're nervous, it's concealment. Right. Get out of the car. Right. And this is what we do. If it's on a busy street, we'd walk away. I walk like 25 foot away, like if it was on an interstate or whatever, because I'm protecting you at that point. Like, you can think this is petty. You can think that this is stupid. And I got made fun of doing that. No, people are dumb and on the streets and on the highway.
Yep.
So, like, even that, you can't pull me out of the car. And I figured Pennsylvania MEMS, like, quickly. Like, no, this is for my safety and it's for your safety. And I'm like, listen, if there's an issue, like, even if I let you go, which I guess I can say now because I'm not in it anymore, I pretty much let everybody go, you know? Like, I never really wrote tickets. I wrote one.
I hate writing tickets.
I do too. But,
I'm
like,
not a fan.
Well, first off, hey, unless it's egregious, you know, like, unless, now if it was like a wreck or something and I'm like, this is going to bite me if I don't do it, then I'd probably do it, you know? But, like, no, man, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And let's go about our merry way. Because I hope that everybody gets, because look, there's a shortage of cops, there's a shortage of issues, or there's a shortage of cops, there's a not shortage of issues.
Right, it's a continued climbing mountain.
It's a continued climbing mountain. And because people are so excessive to, okay, smartphone, you know, smart app, whatever they can do to call out or to get help, the burden for the police has gone up exponentially without the resources being put into that. And I think that in and of itself is a big deal too.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually, man, I've lost. I am at 85 pounds down. Thanks.
Nicely done, dude.
Yeah,
Nicely
85.
done.
I was gonna say something, but I didn't want to sound like a jerk if I started talking about, like,
No,
you look thin from a man I've never seen before, but from photographs, I'm like, looks a little bit thinner than normal.
Yeah, no, 85 pounds down, man. Carnivore diet has been the trick that I've used, the carnivore diet. Right. Last night I had 2 filet mignons, some strawberries, some blueberries, and I'm like, I can eat this and lose weight, and I go to the gym 4 times a week, so I guess
I'm sure.
I was gonna say,
got a
'cause
little bit more to do with it.
Literally everything you just said, I don't do.
Right.
And
well, look, I kind of nerded out a little bit because I don't listen to, like, so I'm in sports. I don't listen to sports podcasts really, other than a couple of friends that I want, like, they're, hey, what is he thinking? Why does he think this? And that's a good reference point of, like, nah, I don't really agree with that, or I do agree with it. But then I kind of nerded out on, like, nutrition and then, like, all this kind of stuff and, like, lifting. And I was like, dude, I feel great. I feel so much better. And one guy is Mike Iserdale is the guy, Dr. Mike Iserdale is the guy, and he's like a bodybuilder. He goes, you can't outrun a bad diet. And we had heard that, like, our whole lives. You know, you can't outrun a bad diet. And I'm like, light bulb, you know. And I think stopping drinking and just eating the whole thing of pizza.
Change to a healthier lifestyle, kind of. Yeah.
Well, and I love the buffalo breadsticks from Tommy's. Those bastards are good, you know. And I'm like, I want to eat this, but, you know, it's just like I can't keep doing that. But it was 85 pounds, man. It's
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I want to get to mid-March is what we're trying to get to the hunt. Or I would say we, like somebody else is in there lifting weights with me in the gym.
you need your personality.
Yeah, right. No, but it's been a fun journey. I will talk about carnivore until the cows come home, pun intended. But it's been really good, man. It's like I thought I'd get burnt. You talking about burnout? I thought I'd get burnt out just eating meat. Dude, I eat steak like 3 times a week. I'm like, y'all are going to have to start convincing me that this sucks. Like, you're going to have to convince me that like me going to the griddle that this is, like, this sucks and that this is stupid.
Well, there's so many different ways you can cook a steak and different, you know what I mean? Like,
I just try to cook it good. That's all I do.
Well, the thing that I learned is, because I've eaten so much, like, red meat since March of this past year, it's like trying so many different things. Like, hey, man, I want a little spice to this, and I'll tell you, salt, pepper, and a little cayenne pepper. And somebody had told me about that, and I'm like, this is gonna suck. I'm gonna butcher this meat up, and dude. It was incredible, and I had just got some blood work, and I thought, like, hey, man, you're eating red meat, and, you know, my cholesterol is going to be stupidly bad. Pretty fine. I mean, it was a little high, but I was like, man, I was 350 pounds. You know, like I you know, I'm sure it was a lot worse eating those Twinkies. There goes the F word. Even sorry, they're good. Eating those Twinkies. You know, but that, you know. And that's another thing. We talk about cops. Man, I'll tell you, I'll say this. I had the worst diet.
Yep.
And I think that
we
so
all do
many
this
people,
because you try to squeeze in what you can when you can.
Right. And the worst part about it, like, because we do this too. We end up every shift, even though like we work for different places, like, you know, we work together at the same times, and so we'll be like, hey, let's get something to eat. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, my favorite nights to eat are when he's like, hey, I made this today, and he brings it to work, because he never brings,
no doubt,
he never brings the right, you know, like side with it. Like, this dude shows up with this canned, jarred, whatever it was that his wife made.
No. So it was,
and he brings me one slice of bread. And
it's
but
all
like
I
a
had.
whole jar
It's all I
of
had.
meat. And don't get me wrong, like, it was good. It was good.
So it
right?
was deer roast, and that we cooked,
man.
but it come out like, when I say tender,
Dude.
like there was like,
and you got to really cook a deer roast,
and
man.
Dude, it
like,
was amazing.
It was phenomenal, and I 100%. I'm the cook in my house. My wife cooked that. I'm not telling you how because it's a secret, but
should be
she cooked
impressive.
it, and it was amazing. Like, it could legit be.
I'll give you $20 for the rest.
Like
of it.
like a roast beef po' boy or whatever. Like, it was
No,
tender.
it
It
was
was you know,
amazing.
it was
Brings
amazing.
me one slice of bread.
That's all I had left because I ate the rest of the bread with it.
It was,
I
but it
hear
was
you.
good. But like, so we'll be sitting there, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we work the graveyard. You know, we're you know, 4 to 4, or I think you're what, 6 to 6 or something like that. You know, so it's like 1 in the morning. It's like, what's open? Well, you got Jack in the Box, so we're gonna get sick from, or you got to go to Taco Bell, or you got, you know, Burger King that closes at 11. So it's like, what choice do you have but trash to eat?
Yeah.
You know, granted, we did just start doing this whole ice cream from the gas station, which sounds terrible, but South Louisiana, you can get food anywhere at a gas station. But they have decent
Delicious.
ice cream at that gas station. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it's, I don't know why.
Yeah, dude. I mean, everybody says don't get this or that from a gas station. Like, you've never lived in Louisiana,
Right,
You know,
right.
like that's.
I'll do
you know.
gas station sushi. It don't bother me.
Okay,
I won't go that far.
Look,
Yeah, I won't go that far.
Right. Like, this
Look,
is the
I
same
got- I
guy
gotta
who's
feed-
got like a trash
I gotta
can
feed
stomach, but then like complains about his stomach later.
Got to get fed. So
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing that I'd say on that is, like, even because we're out all the time, like me, you know, being in sports and traveling moderately a lot, you know, for things. People are like, well, what do you eat? Dude, I'll go to McDonald's, okay? I'll get 4, like, hamburger patties with no cheese, just plain, and I'll eat them, and I'll throw everything else away. And it's like, you can do it. It's
Right.
like, I had to figure out, like, hey, if I'm going to be serious about this, like, let's not mess up and have a whole basket of fries. By the way, basket of fries, $1.99 McDonald's. You know, I'm like, that's as simple as, like, you know, cutting out the carbs. And I'm like, you know, but has he introduced you to pork steak?
no.
Has he introduced you to Ronnie's Boudin?
Nope.
Shameless plug to our guys over at Ronnie's. I know the guys over at Ronnie's. Listen, on Thursdays,
Linda, listen.
y'all need to go to Ronnie's Boudin in Cracklin. By the way,
I haven't because we haven't worked that area, and I don't know that he's earned it.
Earned it.
Yeah.
You've had a finger
I said what I
inside
said.
me.
I
What
said
do
what I
you
said.
mean haven't earned it?
So
I'm not going to give any pretext. to
By
that
the
either.
way, I love our good friend Scott.
Mm-hmm.
He's wrong on one thing. It's not their best thing.
Scott, that's Blake saying that. That's
It's not. It's not. No.
I get
First
it.
off,
I'll stay your friend, Scott.
it's not. Ronnie's Boudin on Mondays. Thick, fat, juicy pork chop, cornbread, yams, greens, and red beans. Yes,
I
sir.
can say it's good. I can say it's good. So Thursdays is this giant pork steak that's served on a bed of boudin rice, but you also get mac and cheese that's got cracklings mixed in it.
Son. And you wonder why I had to lose 80 plus pounds. You know what I mean?
It was amazing.
Right.
It was amazing.
Well, I go in there and get his venison, get their venison and stuff like that. I got their green for Christmas and Thanksgiving. My brother, I always like get some like venison or whatever.
Right.
And the green pepper, man, the green pepper sausage, son. And then he did like this special like spicy pineapple venison. I'm like, I know I'm on carnivore, but I'm gonna kind of go off for like around Thanksgiving, you know, bro. This man can cook. I don't know. I don't know how he learned to put pineapple. And I'm like, pineapple. This is gonna suck, dog. I am telling you.
I made that for him the other night. I had I mixed some pork and deer with I called it a Hawaiian something or other. That was that pork Hawaiian I brought to you. Like, dude ignored a whole call just to eat it. I know You're going to remember because I mixed eggs with
Oh,
it.
yeah. I didn't ignore a call.
Yeah, you did. Because
didn't.
you texted your shift partner and asked him to go take it for you because you were eating.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Must be nice to have
it was okay. It was okay.
Okay, all right.
okay.
That's not what he was saying that night.
So
But it is really
getting
good.
back to
It is.
getting back on topic, going way down the rabbit hole. So one of the things that we talked or that I liked was when you didn't come at me sideways as far as crushing my dreams, of what I thought law enforcement was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
When even though you were burnt out, you just said, "Hey, look, this is what I'm going through. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing." And you would reference, "Hey, I'm not physically or not for your physical health and your mental health. This is a good decision for me." And I took that. I'm not going to lie. And I know to you, like we didn't have an argument. Like we were eating steaks at the house.
Yeah,
it was
I remember that.
it was a good time, and I was being respectful. In my brain, I was sitting there. I was like, shut your mental health up. Like, oh, it's so stressful or whatever. Like, you get to go be, you're the hero when you show up in front of kids and stuff like that. Like, and all this other stuff. So I hadn't experienced it yet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But as my career went on, because we had that conversation, like that was always in my brain. Like, hey, look, this is obviously a concern, to be aware of. And so what I liked was, you didn't come at me real jaded, hey, you just need to hang it up. Because I had a lot of people doing that. You need to leave this agency. You need to find another career. Go be a Walmart greeter or be a greeter at Walmart or whatever, And like a lot of people had a very harsh approach because they had been jaded or whatever.
Right.
So what I liked was you took more of a gentler thing, realizing that, hey, look, I'm still excited about this career.
Yeah.
But you also turned it, and this is where kind of give you a little bit of your own kind of moment to talk to listeners and let them know what you got going on. You also took that as a driving force to say, hey, look, I want to focus on what I want to do,
right,
and make this thing successful. And so what you did was you started a podcast, called "Are You Serious?"
Yep.
and talked about sports. And I was in high school, like I played baseball, played golf, always grew up,
Can't
being
play golf. Shut
being
up.
relatively not high end athlete, but always staying busy and being athletic.
right.
But when it comes to sports now, I'm more of like, yeah, you go sports, type guy. Like I'm just not.
Just see him. He got
this is-
winded playing frisbee in his front
I did. We were playing frisbee. I'm just like,
I talk
ain't
about it.
got
I
no
don't
more.
play it, so
Yeah,
I'd
right,
probably be the
right.
same way,
So running around with the kids on Thanksgiving with a frisbee. I was
Right.
Came up with a great idea that day,
So,
though.
but anyway, so if you want to tell them kind of what drove you into your podcast and
Yep.
how that became a success.
So I think for me there are a couple of factors. Number one, I wanted to always kind of do that. I thought that, ironically, I thought that I had saw people that were talking about like LSU and Saints and just national sports, and I'm like, I don't agree with hardly anything that they're saying. Like the details of the game that I'm watching,
Right.
okay, that's not what's happening, right? And I'm like, dude, I know that I can do this. Well, a couple of things that happened too. I love football and I loved LSU. And when you're in law enforcement and you're working on Saturday, you're probably not going to watch the game. And I'm like,
right.
screw you. I'm going to do it. But really and truthfully, I started out as it being a hobby, right? Like I don't really care. It's kind of like something that I thought that would relieve stress from me because I'm having fun. And I didn't have a lot of hobbies, really. Like I didn't have I love to go hunting. I love to go fishing. But there's only so many times that you can do that.
Right.
And by the way, you're on a law enforcement salary, and you can't really spend the money. So ironically enough, my wife, my precious wife, we were getting married about the time that I was transitioning out, and around that time, she was like, "What do you want your wedding cake to be?" Like, guys get their own wedding cake or whatever. I was like, I don't know.
The groom's cake.
We got groom's cake. I was like, whatever. I want this. Get this. Well, she had made a cake that was about the podcast, and I was like, the foresight for her to see she knew that this is what I wanted because I always talked about it and I always built up to it. The thing that was a little different is because of college and because of other life experiences, I'd already known a lot of people that were still in the business. So basically, like, I started breaking some news. Like, we broke the Steve Ensminger news. There was an offensive coordinator at LSU, and we just had built connections because, and I'd probably tell you at a later time after everybody's out. Like, I'd have conversations on with the phone, and my wife Megan would be sitting right there and be like, "Did he just tell you that he got hired by LSU?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Are you about to like run that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess."
Mind your business,
right?
Well, I don't care. I'm like, look, every time I'm on the phone, I'm like, somebody's around me. I'm like, hey, be cautious of what you're gonna say, but it's just my wife.
Right.
And so,
not once has he ever told me, "Hey, Mike, watch what comes out of your mouth. You're on speakerphone." I will give him that. Not once.
Well, I think, well, that's true too. But I think that it's a little different because, like, in media,
right,
you're like, I don't want to break anybody's confidence. I don't want anybody
that if they tell you something, you're just going to run it for ratings.
Right. And I think that I have done a pretty good job of not doing that. And I always, in today's society, the media shifts things in their view and their light. And I never wanted to be somebody like he's not himself. Mm-hmm. Like he's saying this, he's a mouthpiece for somebody else. First off, I'm never going to be that. But secondly, I didn't want to be that.
Right.
And so it kind of started gaining traction. I was like, you know what? I'm happy-go-lucky. I'm extroverted. I want to go out there and talk about it. And so I just started doing a show. And then one day I saw a live button, okay? And I clicked the live button to go live on a platform that we're building. And I'll never forget this. It got 9,000 views. And I'm like, holy shizite. People like what I'm saying. Well, come to find out, it was just because we were new and, like, everybody was trying to see, like, what it was. And so I had a lot of growing that needed to go into it. So
I'm amazing. I suck.
You're right.
I was here. I'm here.
I'm like, 9,000 views. This is awesome.
I'm burnout again.
That's what I'm telling you. He was like, I started from the bottom. Now we're here.
Right. Like, this shit's easy. Like, none of y'all can do this, but I can do it. And then so I just built, and I learned, like, I know how to do sound production. I know how to do editing. I know how to do everything. Right. So now that we have a small little team around us and they do it, like, hey, man, I'm never going to ask you to do something that I have not done. Right. And it was really just a hobby. And then around one day, my wife had she didn't make this suggestion, but she had kind of thrown it out there, like, hey, if you're going to do this, you can't be doing this and making this your whole life unless you're getting paid from it.
Right.
And so I was like, as the kids say today, bet, I'm going to do this. And I had a friend who owned a small business, and he came on, and then a couple more came on, and then just building through connections, I got connected with this Believe, which is a national podcast host site and podcast platform. And, man, I just kept working. And really and truthfully, and it's funny, I look back at it now because I was doing other stuff for a job, and I just put my head down. I went to work. I didn't say anything. And miraculously, this past January, or a year ago now, that I went full-time, and this is like all that I do. So basically, the three things that I tell people who start a podcast or talk about a podcast, number one, be yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't unapologetically be yourself.
Yep.
Don't be something you're not.
Right.
Don't be something that you want to be. Be who you are, and people will tell you if they like you or not.
Well, so what I found was, and I know we've only been doing this, since September, is you can't keep up if it's a facade, you can't keep it up.
No,
you can't.
Because we came in with hey, we're going to do this and this, and so a lot of our original listeners, we were putting out, like we had to change how we were putting. Yes.
What is it, Blake?
We had.
I think LSU's going to hire a tight ends coach within the next 48 to 72 hours.
It was vaguely, but well said.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we're just talking about trust,
right?
And my phone's over here buzzing like a.
And I got to give you credit because you knew the rule. Like we told him the rule before we started.
Well, if it's one, I'm like, okay. Right. If it's two and it sounds like a vibrator's going off on the table, I'm like. Right. Oh shit! Like. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But no, it was one of the things like we had kind of had aspirations where we're like, hey, this is what we want to do, and
Yeah, we talked about it. You called me.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were doing 2 to 3 episodes of brand new content, solid episodes every week.
Yeah.
And we were doing, in the beginning, we're like, oh, we got this. And then after, like, the longer you go on, you're like, I'm not saying we can't find content. Like, it's not a struggle there, but it was a lot, man.
Right.
No, it's a struggle to find content
right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the worst part about it was like
we didn't want to be repetitive.
Right. But we didn't know, for lack of better terms, we didn't know our from a hole in the wall. Like
I didn't either.
6 months ago, if you'd been like, hey, you can edit an hour-long video in less than 30 minutes, I would have called you a liar. I'm like, there's no way. Now, like, I know for a fact I will have this video done in an hour. Like an hour tops. I'll have it broken down into the 3 different segments, plus everything, the reels and all that.
But he's going to complain about it for 4 days.
Oh, I'm going to complain about it.
I promise you, because he's going to be like, I'm spending all this time. I got to smoke inside the room and all this other stuff.
He's lying. He's telling all nothing but lies. But, and then I know that it's going to take me at least 2 days to get everything uploaded with internet speed and all of that, because it takes a while for the platforms, because we're on so many platforms.
Yeah, he's acting like he's the one uploading it himself. Like he's got to,
where are you?
Chisel it out.
Where are you?
You hit a button. Okay.
Yeah, and then you got to wait, and you got to make sure that there's no errors in the uploads.
It's not that big of a deal.
Anyway,
let the man get.
I know the struggle that
let the man get back to his thing.
So no, but
I'm
that
a creative genius.
That was I don't know about creative. I'll give you that one, but that was a conversation we had, because we contacted a lot of people before we got started, because it was like, we don't know what we're doing, but we know what we want to do, and that was kind of like our thing. So it's like. Because I remember after he called you and he was like, this is what he said. And I had to look at him and be like, I don't know that I should be 100% me, because I have a really bad mouth. And I'm going to say exactly what I'm thinking and feeling. And he was like, okay, maybe just instead of being at 10, we'll take it to 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's different because y'all's podcast is about something that is like real life, like, you need, I mean, I don't want to say it like this, but sometimes people are searching for stuff for life or death situations, right?
Right.
Me, I'm yelling, why in the hell you didn't run the ball on 3rd and 1, right? Like, it's literally like a completely different situation. So I understand like where you're coming from, of like my complaints and what I'm getting aggravated at and yelling is because I'm upset about a football game that in all actuality in life doesn't really mean shit, right? Like it doesn't mean anything. But to that point, I'm going to always try to be my unapologetic self, because when you clip this and you put it out there and they're like, oh man, Blake was on the show, they know every time 100% what they're going to get. They know the passion level that comes with it.
Yep.
They understand the intensity that comes with it. And look, there's some showmanship that comes with doing it, right? Like, like I'll make a joke to come out, or like a big event of a sports thing throughout the day, like, hey, like there was a big Fox Sports thing where people were sleeping with one another. I'm like, guys, I was not there. Everybody wanted me to go and work there because I'm a sexual Italian whipped cream, but they don't, I did not work there. But to y'all's point, the serious level is like what I see like Rogan doing. Like you can have fun and a whole bunch of different episodes and contents like what we're having here. But there are times where he gets into situations like he's, interviewing presidential candidates or vice presidential candidates. My man's never worn a button-down shirt on his podcast ever in his life, and he's going there meeting what now will be in a couple of days the 47th president of the United. Like, you got to know the situation of where you're at and what you're doing. But for me, in reference to sports, listen, man, I'm going to come in here and tell you, run the ball on 3rd and 1 when you need to. Like that, and it's a completely different scenario, but really and truthfully,
but that's also your passion, though.
Right. Well, that's what I was about to go to. Like, I am extremely passionate about LSU football. Like, and so really and truthfully, which we hadn't really even talked about this. Like you and I, like our national college football show is skyrocketing. So like the local stuff is great and it's perfect, and I will always talk about LSU, but. About 2 years ago, and knowing what I already knew about the podcast space, and I have a fantastic co-host, kind of like what y'all have, and Joe DeLeon.
Mine could be better.
Yeah, mine could do better.
We argue a lot. It's 2 Italians on a podcast, like it's like, anyway, I'm going to leave that one alone so you don't have to edit it out. But like that, I knowing what I knew going into it, I was able to hit the ground running from the very beginning, and he was able to run from the ground from the beginning, and it's massive, man. Like we'll probably end with like close to a total of 1 million views in the month of in the month of December. And then probably around the same in the month of January.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to be straight up with you.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports guy.
No problem.
And this was a question I actually thought of. It's kind of like a 2-part question, but I actually thought of it the other day. So I'm not a sports guy. I don't set my clock around it. My life doesn't revolve around it. I don't knock anybody that's big into sports.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is, were you raised in an environment that sports were like a big thing?
Oh,
like
100%. 100%.
My second question is, do you ever talk about the fact that 90% of LSU and Alabama's recruits come out of the Tangipahoa Parish guideline? That's a real statistic. That
What?
Tangipahoa Parish.
90% of LSU and Alabama players are all from Tangipahoa Parish?
No, they're no.
Yeah.
Okay. It may be old.
Right.
It may be old. All right.
Yeah, or
but
false.
Not false. Not false. At one point they were from.
There's
Kentwood,
no way 90% of their players
and from Hammond.
they could have a good bit. Don't get me wrong, but there's no way 90%
year,
of Alabama and LSU players come
First
from
off,
Tangipahoa Parish.
we have an expert here, not a mic.
Yeah, he already said you're wrong.
But
Yeah, it's not 90%. It's
what?
There are a lot.
Not 90%.
Can we stop interrupting?
There are a lot that come from the local area. Not that much.
At one point there was. It was a big article that I read, and this was a couple years ago. And I know for a fact because it was my argument to keep my son in the.
I actually kind of remember the article that you're talking about. It's actually of like North Shore, of all of the athletes that play college football in the North Shore come from a specific 60-mile radius.
Right.
But it's not like they go everywhere.
Right,
so like 10% comes from like I'm not St. Tammany or something like that. Like, but there is a 60.
You know what it was? I am wrong. It was.
I know.
It was during that year. During that year,
it was like
the players had come from the Tangipahoa.
Well, and it's going to continue to be the same just from dynamics. To your first question, massively grown up in a sports household. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was the head baseball coach at Franklinton High School.
Okay.
We won multiple state championships, and so we were a baseball family. But my mom loved sports, and my parents were divorced, and so every Saturday, LSU was on the TV, and you're going to root, cheer, and love it. And what I'm about to say is going to probably get me canceled from an LSU perspective, but a lot of people live this the same way that I did. In 2000, LSU hired a guy named Nick Saban. Right. And so my love for football became so high because my mom's intensity towards the sport, and then her love and passion towards the sport, where it was at an outright high. And so, yes, then my uncle, who took over the baseball team, he was the head coach and was there for 35 years. Now his son, my cousin, who was in my wedding, I'm really close with, now he's the head baseball coach. So it's like a family thing of baseball. Right. So I grew up in an environment where, like sports are going to be like a number one factor of I'll say this. When Christmas was at my house this year with my entire family, pretty much all the conversations start with sports related talk. I go to another Christmas party, same side of the family, it's football, basketball, baseball, football, basketball, baseball. So,
there's no escaping it.
Right.
And here's the thing. I don't want to escape it. Right? Like it's like, when you sit down with me and you start asking me sports questions, you better get in it, and you better come correct, because now I literally, and you can ask my wife this, I literally sit there and like I work my ever living ass off to know how I'm going to structure things, what we're going to talk about, what is my actual opinion on the matter, and then what are the actual facts, not an opinion. Right. Like, so facts, opinion on, and I'll tell you what it is. So to your first question, is probably the biggest thing. It was my comfort level, right? Like my comfort level was that look, man, I mean, I grew up in this shit. And so why would I not do the number one thing that I love the most? Like, it's so dumb. Like, what is the number one thing that you love to do? And for all you little teenagers or mid-20s guys that are out there saying, I want to make love to a beautiful woman. I love that too, but that's, like, come on. Like, that's not.
There's very few of us that can get paid to do that.
I mean, I don't know if I wouldn't mind to get paid to do that too, but I mean, like, it just, it was the thing that I knew that if you cut on a microphone in front of my face and we had a conversation about something, I could argue, debate, talk about this specific thing.
Right.
Now, when it comes to like other things I'm not familiar in, no, go get somebody else.
Right.
Like that's not me. But if you want a sports thought, I pretty much can give you a general. And I got to give my mom a lot of credit, man, because my dad's not a massive sports guy. She pushed the envelope. And then you grew up and look, my parents were divorced, like I mentioned, but my uncle was also a massive part in this because he would take me to school. He was my head baseball coach. And I got to see like by the way, the winningest head baseball coach in that school's history probably should be a Hall of Fame level high school baseball coach. Like the things that I learned from him are at another level that nobody else got to experience. And then the people that he brought around him. Like the conversations that he would have with like this coach that coaches at Tulane, and they're on a first name basis. Like, Jeff, do you remember when we were doing this, and this? And I'm like, damn. Like, and actually when I was in college, wanted to be a coach. Then somebody told me how much money they make, and I'm like, screw that. And then I go into law enforcement. Yeah, and I go into law enforcement.
Right.
But I
kind of misread the numbers there.
Right.
Yeah, kind of misread the numbers there. But yeah, I that has been my passion. It will always be my passion. Like, listen, man, I tell people this. If LSU, like my wife went to a wedding during the LSU Alabama game, and it was a close friend of ours and somebody she worked with. And I did not go, and I didn't think two things about it. Number one, because I can't miss the LSU Bama game, right? Like,
right.
We do a post
work, babe.
Well, that's another thing.
Right.
It's like I tell people this all the time. I don't go to games because we do a post game show.
Right, that would be difficult to do an on-site.
Yeah, it would. It would definitely. But it's so funny that I get to say like, you can't tell me shit about watching sports because this is our revenue,
right?
And so it kind of like, so to kind of come back to your ultimate question of like, I knew I wanted to do it, I thought it'd be fun, and then a hobby turned into a business that supports me and my family, and that was ultimately like, for me, like, this is the best thing,
well, I'm
the
also
best
sure
thing ever.
It wasn't just it wasn't just I'm gonna make this this is a hobby. I want to go into this full time. Like, there was a lot of work that had to go into it.
Oh man, 4 years
of not getting anything. I'm sure.
Yeah, and if anything, very small amounts of things. Like, look, man, it took me 4 years to be able to. And listen, days like I was a full-time employee somewhere where LSU was in baseball was in Omaha trying to go for a national championship, and in the month of June I did 39 episodes. 39 shows because
you do every game, right?
Yeah, we do every game. We do live. We do, I'll do short clips. We'll do everything. And man, I'll say this: Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz, that whole run put us up on another trajectory. And I'll never forget this. I during that whole kind of rise to like doing this and then going into a national show and then being like on social media and people like knowing who you were, it was like, what got it to this? And then I just realized, oh wait, I outworked everybody.
Right.
Like there was nothing. There was nothing special.
Be a lot of people. Oh, must be nice, because we're going to have some people who are going to listen to this, and they're going to be burnt out or whatever, and they're like, well, must be nice. Of course you're a successful, sports personality or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they're not,
no, it was a lot of work.
Right. Some people, they're not going to realize that. Hey, it was a lot of going to work, being burnt out, still going home and focusing on
Mike,
what you got to do.
Trying to keep that dream.
Mike, let me tell you this. There would be nights that I would do a show and I'd be done at 12:30, 1 a.m., sometimes even 1:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. I'd have to be up at 5 and then go into work.
Right.
Like, no, so the 4 years I was burnt out. And even my wife had said, like, listen, you're having fun and you're excited and you're energetic, but you're exhausted. And I'm like, for sure.
That's because.
But I was still having fun,
which is the same as mine because they look at it differently than we do. You know, you looked at it as, hey, look, I'm trying to get this going. I've also got a job. I got to do all this. Well, she gave you the ultimate. Hey, if you're going to do this, you need to get paid for it. You know.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to spend that much time,
if you're going to spend that much time,
right.
because she could see the toll on it. You know, because my wife did the same thing when I had my construction business and I was in law enforcement. She's like, you got to do one or the other. You know, because it was. She's like, I need you at home. I don't need you gone all the time, and you show up, you drop your dirty clothes off, put on new clothes, and you're back out the door.
Well, and that's honestly what I love about your wife, because she was supportive from the start, but like being involved, you know, with Mike and going to his house and everything else, like I see his wife all the time.
Right.
And she supports.
Wonderful person.
Yeah, I mean, let's not give her too much credit.
Stop it.
I try to do it. He shoots me down.
I'm gonna get the cherry points here. So you're gonna be in the doghouse.
She
Way to
usually,
go.
Yeah.
she usually supports pretty much any dumb idea he has, regardless of what it is. But she has been 110%. Like, she's come in. She was here for our first episode. Had a dumb idea about a basement in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I still have that whole conversation saved, by the way. But like, you know, she helped us do sound checks. She helped us do all sorts of stuff.
Bad idea.
And Blake, stop it. It's. I love that she supports him in the way that she does, but we're what, 6 months in, 7 months in, and you know we're not at the point of 4 months of posting, but we've been doing this for a little bit longer than that. You know, the setup and everything else.
Yeah, because it was about 6 months ago when we had our conversation.
Yeah, it was June. That was when, because that was when we started our conversation.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I say this all the time. Like, I thank the people that listen to us every night. Like, thank you. Like, the thing that was pinned for a whole year was that I told everybody that, hey, you were able to make me go full time because you're here. If you're not here, then I'm not. I can't do this. But I'm glad you brought that up, man. Listen, I got to give. You know, I don't know if she'll ever see this because she doesn't even listen to my stuff or anything I do.
Yeah, but she ain't got to listen to yours. She can listen to ours.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
I mean, get your own followers.
She could follow.
Well, and there's another podcast. Katie and her brother, they do like a Louisiana Citric podcast, and she was listening to them the other day, and I'm like, so you'll listen to them, but not to me, you know, like just joking. But I got to say this, man, with 2 small children, she has been the backbone of me. And like doing any of this, because sports can be inconvenient from a time aspect, like a very inconvenience. But she understood, like when things started going really well over the last couple of years, like and from a financial standpoint, from just a business standpoint, she understood it. And look, I tell her all the time, like, I could have not done this, like, if you did not step up to the plate. Just as much as I stepped up to the plate and delivered and worked my ass off. So to your point, look, I know people have rough things like at home, but man, she was such a massive piece for me.
You have such big feet. I couldn't make this room any bigger for you, man.
I know. These Greek toes.
Slow so he can.
You know, this Egyptian voodoo lady or whatever she was. She told me, she goes, you got royalty feet because of your toes or whatever. You know, your toes tell like your lineage. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me I should be drinking wine and grapes, botch? You know, like, come on. But anyway, she was a mass. I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, you could tell a man by his toes. I mean, by the way, I've literally seen. Never mind. I'm gonna leave that alone. But see, I'm talking about feet and talking about my wife. People are gonna think I'm a psycho.
Yeah,
but
weird.
she really was the complete backbone of what AYS and what now Ruffino and Joe Show will ever be, because, man, I mean, like, I could not have done this without her, like, at all, because she could have easily said, like, hey, man, get serious, because the podcast game, here's the funny thing about the podcast game.
She could have been like, are you serious?
Well, right.
Yep,
I see the pun. But see, and here was the conversation about, like, you know, because when family's involved and you tell them what you're doing and you tell them, like, you're doing this full time, they're like, what? Like, you're doing what? And so it's like, well, first off, hold on. I'm tripling your little salary, okay? Don't you dare tell me what you think that I am and am not doing, Okay,
Right.
like I'm not an idiot, and I think and the podcast game in and of itself, it's like it's so new that people don't realize. Like I have a good friend named Chris. He just got a massive deal, and I'm like. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like this was not a massive thing.
Right.
And then when you're giving, like, technology is giving people the voice to be able to go and do and say whatever they want to say. And so if people like that, and I think that she understood it. Like when we would have clips, like there was a clip that I had where I absolutely go bananas. Like I'm screaming, I'm like red faced, there's a vein that pops in the middle of my head, and it gets like 500,000 views, and I'm like, holy crap, this is working. And then people kind of understand and get on board. And then now it's like, oh wait, dude, this dude's actually doing this. Like it's not a joke.
Right.
Like, and I don't. And another thing too, I never treated it as a joke. Right. Like people go in there and treat it as a hobby. I never treated it as a hobby. I treated it as, no, this is my goal. This is my dream. Now I never like wrote anything down or anything. Like I want to be here by then. I just wanted to work my ass off.
5-year plan.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do that. I mean, like, because I never knew that it would be like this. I just wanted to do it. But I'm glad you brought that up because, man, having somebody at home that supports you, oh, it's a massive deal, dude. It's a massive deal.
Well, I think the podcast realm is going to be is growing to be one of the avenues that people get their information from more than like talk radio and stuff like that.
Well, it's going to become what talk radio was.
Well, it's like, because we talk to like his
dad.
Well,
people want to see you. They want to see your emotions. They want to see like, hey, is he? I can hear him, but is his mannerisms like? Is he joking? Right,
well, It's like his dad before we got started, he had talked to his dad, and his dad's like, when he had told him what the premise of the podcast was going to be, he's like, you know how much this would have helped me years ago, going to and from work, versus listening to people prank calling each other on the phone, and honestly just being goofiness on the radio, because I get at the time they were trying to just be funny or whatever, but people are looking for something that's more genuine in that they can see themselves in,
without a doubt.
Well, society today has gotten more aware of our shortcomings, and as much as I dislike some of it, they've gotten away from the, poking fun at everything, where that's no longer like the cool thing to do, and now it's more of like let's offer help and let's be this guidance, and that's kind of where we're at, where it's like you can only tell somebody so much, hey, don't do this. It's now you got to understand why you shouldn't get to that point of wanting to check out or doing the self-harmful things when there's so many options available. You get on YouTube, you get on TikTok and Spotify, and you can search your problem, whatever you're feeling. But in our case, there isn't a big platform for that. It's usually like, somebody's down in the dumps. There's, I'm feeling sad today. Now you got 40 videos of sad music and sad, puppies getting hurt and stuff like that. And you're like, well, that's not helping me feel better.
Well, and another thing, too, from like y'all's aspect of where you are coming from, you're beat down so much from a work environment situation. Like, I never remember really having like, oh man, this was a great
a good day.
Right. Like this was a good day. You know, there were a couple of situations that I got into that I'm sure that you would remember, but I don't even know if I want to go into it, but I mean, it just like a bad accident, and I'm the first on the scene, and like somebody gets gets hurt, and then you're there, and then you're there to help. Like those are good days. But I say this, and I started the episode of saying like what I know that mentally I had struggled with. Man, I had seen so much bad stuff. Like it's not normal to see like the stuff that police officers see. And
so frequently and on a regular basis.
Right. The last 6 months, I'll say it like this. The last 6 months when I was in Patrol LE I was working a case, okay, because I don't care what anybody says. When you're on patrol, you're working cases.
Yep.
If you want to get down to the bottom of stuff, you're working stuff. And we had a call, and it was a guy had you can edit this out so I could just say.
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah. He had and he there was a lot of cryptic stuff. There was a lot of stuff that was like, it looked like the house had been burglarized. and he left a note. Well, they'd already been investigating him for like some other stuff.
Right.
And so I did not know that. And then all these detectives, come up on scene. And I'm like, this is
abnormal.
This is very abnormal to like what was going on. And it was federal agencies that rolled up. It was local agencies and state agencies that all had rolled up on something that I had been working that I didn't really even know. And so what he had done to himself is not normal for a human being to see.
I think I know what you're talking about because they talked about this after I got to that agency about how abnormal it was the way that he went out.
Oh, it was very abnormal. So
contraption type. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're same page. I know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So
yeah, this was wild. We'll talk offline about it.
Yeah, very wild. So the last call that I ever took from Patrol LE was ironically, and I think this was God, if you don't believe in God, but spiritual or whatever. The last call that I took, all wrapped everything up into a bow. A house was being burglarized, on like in real time. And so I'm also the first on scene, and my partner's literally right behind me. So we get in there, and look, I'm not macho. I want to live. Like I'm not, if somebody
tombstone courage.
Right. No. Trust me. If anybody says Blake Ruffino did something to himself to hurt himself, I promise you that shit. It's bullshit. Like I love myself way too much, and that's conceited, and I love everything about it. But so like we go into the house and we're clearing the house, and somebody's down and they're injured, and this guy's in there and he is injured. He is really messed up, and this woman's in there and she has a weapon on her. And she puts it down. We detain her because we don't know what's going on, know. And we put her in her unit. And so I walk back in the house, and I'm like, this looks so familiar. Like, and I asked dispatch. I called dispatch on the phone. I'm like, have I ever been in this house? And they're like, no. I mean, like they search it. Like, no, you've never taken a call at this residence. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I remember seeing
deja vu is crazy.
It's more than deja vu. It's like I'm starting to get a little panicked.
Right.
Like I'm really freaking out. Like I'm freaking out, man. Like what was it? Super Troopers.
Right. Yeah.
I'm freaking out, man. So for whatever reason, I felt like Dr. House. If you've ever watched the House series,
right.
Somebody said something and I had an epiphany. And I went back to a call that I'd taken 6 months beforehand. All the stuff that had been stolen was in that house. Everything. Pictures, bobbleheads, weapons, labels of specific narcotics. And I'm like, what is going on? So, not to get into too much detail, literally in 100 man hours that I had felt like that I had worked on this, literally in 30 minutes, case done. And so it was like, that was a great way to go out.
Right.
The bad thing that was going on in this situation, I felt good about where I was at.
Closed it off.
I closed it off on something that I felt like there is no other way for me that what all was going on, and I know I'm being a little cagey, but the situation that was going on, and then the intertwine of criminals and how everything intertwined with one another, I was like, of course. I felt like I was on True Detective. I felt like I was Woody Harrelson on True Detective,
Right.
And so it was really crazy, and that whole situation, like, you talk about purpose and being in here, but I brought all that up to say this. Mentally, after going through all of that for probably the next 3 to 4 months, after everything I'd seen, I was in a bad way,
right?
Because there's no way that I was not mature. My maturity level was not high enough to understand the complexities of life that people could actually be doing this. And I think it's a maturity level. Like I say this to everybody. If you're not 25 and above, I think that you should be nowhere near law enforcement, not even remotely close.
I can agree with that.
And I got to be real with you. I would be a little bit more strict if you're not 28 or above, I don't think that you belong in it, because I don't think that you mentally are there.
I want to say I was 28 whenever I got in.
Yeah.
And dude, I was like early 20s.
It was a whole different. I know that I approached it different as a 28-year-old than I would have as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt.
But you've also lived life, and so, or you've experienced things, to give you some basis to operate off of. But also,
I came in at like 35. So I mean, like, because military, I came in the game late.
Well, and you'd already seen probably, I'm assuming, other, right.
To a degree.
He was a cook.
Shut up. I know. Okay,
He wasn't a cook. Wasn't a cook.
I got to block it. I don't want to
Well,
block it.
hey, first off, you got to be nice to the cooks, though, bro.
He wasn't a cook. Does it look like it? He wouldn't be a good cook.
Not really. I mean, I see the tats, and I'm like, he's definitely been in some.
I was never in an area that we had a cook, but
but to that point,
take it to one spot. I did.
Okay, yeah.
But just
no, he's being stupid.
See, this is why I don't. You're so mean to me all the time.
Back to you, Blake.
The time.
But in all seriousness, I don't think I really don't think, and it's not to discourage anybody from doing it. It's just it's my opinion. My opinion is that I don't think I know that I was not at the maturity level that should have been seeing the stuff that I saw.
The magnitude of what you're walking in on.
And the magnitude of who should and shouldn't go to jail in certain situations, right? And I'll never forget this. There was a law enforcement officer who told me right when I graduated from post that, hey, bud, not everybody deserves to go to jail.
Yep.
And so I'm a little bit too compassionate. Like, for example, hey, man, a husband and wife get into a fight. What's the fight? Is anybody physically hurt? No. What are you arguing about? Well, he's cheating on me. Okay, well, y'all separate, and I'm sorry he's cheating on you, but but back then, I was like, you fucking scoundrel, you no good piece of crap. This fine thing here you're cheating on, and nobody was fine either. They were all ugly, but I was not at the maturity level. And what's funny, my son graduated from somewhere close. Preschool, not like.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think you're that old, Blake.
Yeah, and they went around and asked everybody what they wanted to be, and he said a police officer. And I
smack him in the back of the head. No, stop it.
I'll be real with you. My heart sank.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
My heart sank because I'm like, how do I explain to my son? And because there's a picture he saw. My mom had a picture of me when I was a deputy, and it's like still a little bit more jacked. I wasn't the fat dude that I was. Like I had some muscle. I mean, he's like, Daddy, you're a police officer? I want to be a police officer. And then understanding mentally, like he has no clue.
Right. He's still got that innocence level.
Right.
We've talked about that because, like my dad was a cop. The last thing he wanted me to be was and that's why I got in the game so late, because he told me, he said, look, go to college, find any other job in the world that'll make you happy. And I gave it a valiant effort. I had jobs where I was in air conditioning every day. I had jobs where I made good money. I had jobs where I stayed at home. But end of the day, this is where I wound up being. And I know that he had experienced things the same way we did, where it's like, hey, I don't want my son growing up.
No.
Because the innocence level is going to get taken away immediately. And whatever shred of it's there is going to be gone.
Well, and that's another thing. It's like, I wasn't in the military, and I didn't have a dad that was in law enforcement or anything like that. I had nobody to really. I wish that I would have had somebody to really sit me down and tell me, like, you're going to see people that are never going to come back. You're going to be in situations where you may have to take somebody else's life to protect, serve, and because they're trying to hurt other people. And like. He said that, and be honest with you, I told him, like, hey, man, you can do whatever you want, But in the back of my mind, I'm like, over my dead body.
Yeah.
Like, I do not.
If I got to kneecap you.
Right. I'm going to tell you right now, I've been in law enforcement 5 years now, and nobody has ever stepped aside and said, hey, just a heads up. You're going to see some things that are going to be with you for a while. Like, that's something that I think should be an introductory thing,
Well, and Ellie has a very bad, I'm macho, like, forget your mental.
Right.
What do you mean, forget my mental? Right. I'll say this. It wasn't all like that. We had a supervisor, you and I had a supervisor who, there was a very fucked up situation. And sorry.
You gonna be a minute?
Yeah, I'm
you
gonna
ain't doing
be,
this.
this
You
gonna
ain't
be a
doing
whole
this
lot
one in
longer
30
to edit
minutes.
this one.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. There was a really messed up situation where he saw on my face, like, he sent me home. Yeah, he sent me home. I was like, listen, man, because he knew the calls that I'd been on the last probably 48 hours. Like, man, if every bad thing that you can imagine, I went on in that in that 12 to 12 shift.
That was my first week. That was my first week
When I got sent home.
Yeah, because it was we were on our way to one of the houses, and Scott had told me, he's like, look, he said we're gonna go meet Blake on this call or whatever, and he said he's had a Grim Reaper on his back for a while, because it was like if somebody was going to enter the afterlife,
I would go to an alarm.
They were waiting for him to be there.
Burglary alarm.
Yeah,
Somebody
it was
be dead.
not even joking.
You know?
Just surprise. There's a dead body. You know?
Dude, like 32
Gosh.
in a weekend. 32. Now, it was a little different because a lot of people just, like, you go to calls where, like, you know, hey, this person maybe have passed away, or not all of them were like that, but there were some. And when you see that, dude, it was, and Scott kept sending me, like, he would text me like a Grim Reaper, you know, like he goes, every call.
Got out. This was my introduction to the unprofessional side of cops, because Scott and y'all are going to meet Scott one day.
Him being on here,
retired,
Jesus.
Retired NOPD. He'd been, 20 years at NOPD or 25 years,
something like that, yeah.
And then another 5 or 10 years with the sheriff's office. And so this is a man who's done. He's all
seen
of
it all,
right?
At one of the highest,
and so it's he worked Bourbon Street in New Orleans. So there's not much that man has not experienced,
right?
And so I'm sitting there, again, I'm still green. Like, I think I just got my radio that day, and we get out on this call,
which is so wild.
And as he's walking up, Blake's walking up to the house. We pull up. Scott gets out, and he goes. He imitates being a Grim Reaper.
What a jerk, right?
I was just sitting there. I was like, "We're doing this in front of the family."
Right. I mean, but it was the truth. But you bring that up, but to the top.
We're gonna have to wrap this up here pretty soon.
Yeah. The topic. Or I'll just end it with this. The topic on that though. I'm glad that my supervisor stepped in and understood, like,
right.
This is messed up.
Right.
But then secondly, if I'm just gonna be honest to wrap this all on the boat, it's what put me out.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's what when you see that. Yeah. And then I had a conversation. Speaking of my wife, she was not my wife at the time, but she was my fiance, or going to be my fiance, and she's like, you don't have to do this, right? I'm like, oh my God. Because you're in an environment with alpha males or dudes that pretend that they want to be alpha males. What do you mean? You're back, and when I left, the last thing that I got told was that I was betraying somebody. I was like, no, y'all betrayed me. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember catching a supervisor making me catch every call in a district because it was some form of punishment.
Right.
And I was like, first off, I went up to him when I got a break, and I saw him. I'm like, get out. Take them patches off. Mm-hmm. Like, we about to go, big dog. Y'all think that I'm just soft sensitive? Let's go.
Right.
Like, all this stuff that you have now prepared me for, all the stuff that I've now seen, these Greek toes that I'm talking about to be up your ass. And so, like, that is the part where I'm like, now I'm getting, like, fidgety because it's real now. Like, I mean, hey, man, there is no reason. They should have known the situation that I was in. Right. They should have seen the situation I was in. And you brought up, like, me not telling you. Dude, I was a train wreck having to see all of that. I mean, that weekend, okay, was literally, it started off at 6 a.m. with shots fired and people down. Mm-hmm. It didn't stop until Sunday.
Right.
It didn't stop.
The crazy part is, especially in law enforcement now, is that we don't offer a recourse unless you are directly involved in the taking of a life, law enforcement does not offer a mental health recourse.
No.
This is kind of one of our drives to be here, is because you experience so much negativity and trauma and loss with no outlet, that you get to that point where you're just like, no one's going to listen. Nobody cares. Like, every day I go to work and everybody's just suck it up, buttercup, keep going.
Right.
And you get to the cap off point where you're just like, I'm done. I'm going
Right.
to join this statistic now because nobody cares. I would rather do this than continue to face the people at work and actually have to say, I'm not okay, and then face the ridicule and the backlash and the disgrace of having to admit that I'm not mentally or emotionally okay from it.
Right. Well, and look, man, I mean, in that whole like weekend, somebody's dad died, and I knew everybody.
Right.
Right.
I'm the one rolling up on scene. Family's not there. He's down. You know,
Right.
like, you know, it's a tough place to be. And I hope one day, you know, like we all three can have a conversation and take some gloves off. You know, like I hope that day, you know, I hope that day comes, because look, man, there are things that need to change in law enforcement.
Yeah.
There are things that, hey, and if you're listening to this, okay, you're not alone. Right, you're not
Right.
alone in any of this. Like, look, man, I am lucky.
And this is not even just law enforcement.
It's not.
This is just in life, right? I mean, like, you're not alone. And look, I would end it by saying this. Like, look, man, you don't if you're in a bad situation, it's very simple. I know financially things can be tough.
Yep.
Okay, get out. It's not. None of it's worth it. Literally, none of it's worth your mental well-being.
The toll it's going to take on you in the long run.
No, for sure. I still have flashbacks. I had a flashback the other day. You talked about your first call.
I hadn't told him that. I don't think I told you my first call for service, did I?
No, we don't have time for you to tell
Yeah, I know, but it was.
We'll do it offline.
Yeah,
but,
we'll do it soon.
But guys, I want to say thank y'all for taking a moment out of your day, listening to this. I hope it was enjoyable for you. But if you get a chance, go to Are You Serious is the name of the podcast.
Yeah, AYS Sports. You can go wherever you listen to podcasts, Rufino and Joe Show. If you're a sports fan, you want to hear two Italians debate.
Right. If you're not a sports fan, you just like to hear a bunch of people yelling. That's
If you ever
also,
heard it,
I say I'm the Italian Bayou version of Stephen A. Smith. You know, like
Okay.
if you ever just want to hear an argument, two Italians talking is about the same thing. So
yeah,
I mean,
right.
It's a meatball.
Yeah.
So, guys, I want to
Okay,
say
that's a little too much.
That was too far.
I want to say thank y'all for listening to this episode. Go if you like what you heard. If you don't, if you got questions or a topic you want to talk about, send us an email. It's coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. We'll be more than happy to talk to you. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here and toodaloo.
Stupid.